HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra could not remember if cannabis was currently a Schedule 1 or Schedule 5 drug yesterday. Should we be concerned? Now, last August, under Becerra's leadership, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services made a recommendation to the DEA that cannabis should be reclassified from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substance Act. The news sent shockwaves through the nation. Nonstop debates ensued over whether rescheduling or descheduling would be the best path forward for the industry and continue to this day. After President Biden became the first president ever to mention cannabis federal reform at his State of the Union address earlier this month, even though it was kind of didn't, and he kind of lied, and he kind of, we're going to leave all that behind us. The whole thing became inevitable. It's going to happen, but we don't know when. Well, 8 months later, it's almost April 2024, and yesterday, during a subcommittee hearing on his own department's budget request, a dispute over said rescheduling recommendation popped off. And the same dude that made the recommendation and flipped an entire nation on its head forgot if cannabis was Schedule 1 or 5. Cannabis Business Times' Tony Lang reported that Secretary Becerra was in the middle of correcting Republican U.S. House Representative Chuck Edwards of North Carolina, who said HHS's recommendation of was decriminalizing cannabis, when his own memory on the rescheduling process took a stumble. The exchange was during a U.S. House Appropriations Subcommittee hearing on HHS's fiscal 2025 budget request. Despite HHS's already making its recommendation in August 2023, Edward asks Becerra if he thought the declassification of cannabis would make it more available to youth in the U.S., right on Republican brand. The secretary responded by referring to, quote, probably more than half the states in the country where cannabis is already legal for adult use, 24, and medical purposes, 38. He was quoted saying this: "What we're talking about here is, though the federal treatment of cannabis, because federal law treats cannabis differently than most states, and what the president asked us to do is examine where we are with cannabis today at the federal level. And as you are aware, right now, cannabis is scheduled as I'm going to get it wrong, 5 or 1?
Schedule 1. Schedule 1.
No, this is what he said. I'm quoting him.
I know. This is so.
1, Maryland Rep. Andy Harris, a rescheduling opponent, said while chiming in. 1, thank you, Dr. Harris, Becerra said. As Schedule 1, which means the most potent and dangerous type of narcotic. Becerra also explained why reclassifying cannabis to Schedule 3 would not decriminalize its use, something many legalization advocates have said time and time again, that rescheduling is recriminalizing. Edwards pressed Becerra forward on the HHS recommendation. I have a real concern that in light of this mental health issues that we have today, that our federal government, the Department of Health and Human Services, and President Biden are considering descheduling a substance that is far more potent today than it was when any of y'all ever used the drug. That will contribute more to depression, suicidal tendencies, schizophrenia, and those types of things. Edwards said that the HHS's budget report requesting more money to treat substance abuse while at the same time recommending cannabis reform seems very contradictory. Piggybacking over those comments, Harris drew attention to the United Nations Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs 1961 treaty, saying that he has concerns with the HHS hugging with both arms this idea of rescheduling cannabis. Some people think that we would be violating our intentional treaty agreements, he said. Now, given this administration is all in for a treaty agreement with the World Health Organization on pandemic things that would give up our rights to states in a free nation, I'm a little surprised that they want to have this beef with the World Health Organization on a single convention. But I'll leave it at that. Later in the hearing, Representative Steny Hoyer, Democrat in Maryland, the former majority leader, pointed out what he said was another contradiction: tobacco being exempt from the CSA altogether. Good point. Hoyer did not mention that Edwards' home state of North Carolina is the leading tobacco producer in the U.S., according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I think that cigarette smoking is far more lethal and costly to the country and to human beings than is marijuana. Maryland has legalized marijuana by a vote of the people, so I think it is somewhat ironic that we are focused on a less lethal drug according to the medical community. Hoyer also pointed out that the other states where voters have passed legalization measures, including 15 for adult use cannabis and many more for medical cannabis. The other 9 adult use cannabis states initiated the legalization process legislatively. As a result, where we find ourselves in a contradictory situation between the state's legalization and the federal government's, Hoyer said. Interesting exchange indeed, and thankfully, Hoyer was in the building to back Becerra when he was clearly stumbling all over his words. Now, personally, I don't see any need for panic here, but I do honestly do not know what to make of Becerra missing a wide open layup right here. On one hand, these people are busy and everybody makes mistakes. With the amount of public policy work subcommittees handle at any given time, I'm sure the probability of someone misspeaking on certain issues is pretty high. But on the other hand, bruh, this is your job, man. Pressure makes diamonds and it also busts pipes. And yesterday's situation looked a little bit more like Roto-Rooter than De Beers. You got us all into this situation last August, and in this particular moment, while debating whether or not your own recommendation was valid, you froze. I can see this, whole pothead, short memory loss jokes writing themselves over this one. But what's not a joke is the fact millions of lives will be changed forever once the DEA acts on this one way or the other. So in my humble opinion, Becerra should be ashamed of the gaffe that he made yesterday. And now is not the time for any unforced errors. It's an election year and millions of Americans are hanging on to every word politicians speak, even more so when it comes to issues that they care about and matter the most to them and their families. I got nothing but respect for Secretary Becerra, but along with the respect comes honest critique. Yesterday's performance was not your best. October surprise is 5 months away, and a whole lot can happen between now and then. This was a tough road loss, and it happens to the best of us. Hydrate. Hit the showers, eat good food, and love hard on your family, man. Do whatever you need to get your mind right for this next round, because it's a long trip ahead, and you cannot afford to take any more L's to prohibitionists. So please, Mr. Secretary, do not fuck this up. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News. What the rest of y'all think about this, man? In charge.
I mean, I feel like he's.
I think it's more than a gaffe, man. It's an unforced error.
I think he's been hanging around with Biden so much that some of Biden's smartness is starting to rub off on him. I see the smirk, Rico. I see the smirk. I can see it.
Tells me that this is not a priority inside the Beltway for the Biden administration. I think we all knew that. When they put lipstick on the pig, we're taking all these steps to help, former marijuana prisoners. Bullshit.
Stupidity is
bovine scatology for Yarrow. Yeah, they're not doing that.
Yeah, I think we're making more of a big deal than they are. I agree.
You guys do realize that stupidity is contagious, right?
Herd mentality, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I got a mandated vaccine against that, Jason. And
that's what happens when you storm the Capitol. Herd mentality.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh man. Jeez.
When we talk about the concern about whether revised cannabis policy is going to fly in the face of some of our existing treaties, I would imagine, Jason, that doesn't bother you since Trump doesn't seem to think NATO's an important agreement either.
NATO's not important.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is the biggest deal, to be totally candid with you. Like, I don't know that he didn't get 3 hours of sleep the night before, that his kid isn't in
Bro,
the
this
ER
guy has
with strep
staff.
throat.
This guy has staffers that are around him 24/7 that are paid like serious money to make sure that he doesn't make these types of blunders, okay? That's your one goal as a staffer, is to protect your boss and make sure that they're not giving up these types of gaffes to the media.
I think it's a problem, but I think it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is their policies and the fact that they haven't prioritized evolving the federal government's position on some of these things. And frankly, if they did all of that, they could gaff all they want and I wouldn't care, right? So
I'm gonna leave all the gaffing to the unions for all that gaffing work that they do on construction sites.
Yeah.
Well, for those of us in the industry, everything about this is important. But if you put this in a hierarchy of problems that our country's facing, you have to take a look at this objectively and say, all right, he stepped on his wang. He did that. I suffer from CRS, can't remember shit, so we'll give him a mulligan on this one.
A mulligan?
Inside the Beltway, the issues that we're seeing here just don't get the same traction as the political hot points that they want to throw out there to get the election in their favor. And, they're full of shit, but we're not on the top of their priority list. Let's just be clear here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if gaffing was a union organized activity, then who's that guy who was buried under the concrete? I guess then Donald Trump.
Jimmy Hoffa?
Jimmy Hoffa.
Talking about Jimmy
Donald
Hoffa?
Trump would be the Jimmy Hoffa of gaffing, right?
Oh God. Oh jeez. Jeez Louise. You guys.
Man.
Yeah.
3 out of every 4 words that Trump speaks are gaffes, but so I guess they're not gaffes anymore. So
Trump.
He is the human embodiment of a broken clock.
Trump doesn't give gaffes. He just spits facts to you guys, and you guys just melt like snowflakes.
He is the human embodiment of a broken clock. Every now and again, he says something that's like, oh, yeah, that might be right, but majority of what he's saying is just utter bullshit. And you know it, Jason.
It's not.
I've never seen somebody whose stream of consciousness looked more like a stagnant pond.
Oh God, you guys are so funny. We're gonna go. Yeah. We're gonna go to a commercial. We're gonna be.
Just took a hit of DMT. Listen to me give a speech, right?
Yes, exactly.